How's it? Welcome to episode 10 of Lessons from the Best, holistic insights, tips, and tricks to help you improve your golf. These are all insights that are from my book, which is if you don't know, a culmination of some of the most entertaining, some of the best podcasts I've had throughout the 10 seasons, or currently 10 seasons, of my On The Mark podcast. Guests on there that were in this book are Max Homer, Colin Morikawa, Bryson DeChambeau, Fred Couples, Nick Price, Al Sutton, David Ledbetter, Bob Rotella, a number of these just legends of the game, Mike Adams, Terry Rolls, Butch Harmon, Bill Harmon. There's just so much information in my podcast. I decided to put together some of the best. And now as I go through more of the podcast transcripts, it's occurring to me that Lessons from the Best 2 is in order, but still 18 chapters in here. We got some to go, and this is episode 10. And now, because we're in 2025 and because we're on the heels of the 2025 WM Phoenix Open, where I had the thrill of following Jordan Spieth for a couple rounds over the weekend, I've got to talk about Jordan Spieth because it's fresh in my mind. I mean, he made some Spiethian saves there in Phoenix to keep himself in the mix. And it kind of reminded me of who Jordan is and how he approaches the game, how good he is with a wedge around the greens, you know, how much he sort of makes shots happen, how much anything's possible. And a lot of his chapter sort of dealt with things along those lines. He speaks of his time growing up, how the green where he grew up taught him to hit really close to the ball, taught him to use a lob wedge with almost 0 degrees of bounce, which is crazy. So he talks about his chipping technique. He talks about the Masters victory. He talks about going through the slumps and coming back. And he also talks about his victory in the 2017 Open Championship at Royal Birkdale. And so with that being said, here's a couple of quotes from the chapter, from the podcast in this chapter in Lessons from the Best. And this is in 2017. He had a lead. He was in the final group with Matt Kuchar. And then on a par 4 on the back 9, the 13th, he blows his tee shot way out to the right-hand side. And if any of you remember, there was a large debacle. He got relief. In the end, makes a miraculous bogey. And so here's some quotes as I quizzed him and we reminisced over that passage of play en route to the eventual victory at the Open Championship. So this is him. This is after he had made the bogey. And this speaks to the competitive mindset and indeed the Jordan Spieth mindset, something I feel like we can all learn from. So this is Jordan, and I quote, "I actually was walking to the next hole and I lost the lead with 5 to go. And I remember going to use the restroom in the portalet." So now he's off the bogey. He's walking to the next hole. He goes to the bathroom. And I remember actually being in there and being like, all right, you lost it, the lead, but you're only down 1. There's nobody else around. It's just him that you're playing against. And you can beat him by 2 shots over the last 5 holes. So again, here's Jordan walking from the hole, goes to the bathroom, and in there he says to himself, he speaks life into himself. He goes, you lost it, but you're only 1 down. It's not the end of the world. So he's putting it into perspective after hitting this bad tee shot, which he explains in a minute. I'll get there. Then he goes, there's nobody else around. So now he gets myopic and singular. Then he goes, it's just him that you're playing against. So now he's defining the goal. He's like, all right, you just 1 down. There's 5 holes left. It's just Matt Kuchar and me. And then he says this to himself. And you can beat him by 2 shots on the last 5 holes, which eventually would turn into the victory. So that's Spieth. So talking about that again, he sort of looks at the situation, puts it into perspective. He's hit a bad tee shot, made a bogey, miraculous, not the end of the world. Still a lot to play for, a lot of time over 5 holes. And he sets the goal in his mind. But most importantly, if you listen to the show, he said he talked to himself while he was in the bathroom. All right. That stretch of holes thereafter, he called some of the best golf he's ever played, but that's an aside. Then he goes further. My confidence level in my game was not thrown off by one tee shot I hit. I was thinking, I'm playing really well. It had started raining a little, and I had made a mistake not committing to the shot. I caught a little water ball. That is what I'm telling myself in my head. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. Let's step up and hit an iron shot and just try to have a putt to win each hole. You see how simple he's making it? Yet he's telling himself what he's going to do. And I remember thinking about that while I'm in there. So he's still in the bathroom. And I stepped out of there, and I probably hit the best shot that I would say I've ever hit to this day. It was a 6-iron that I hit on 14. Once I won that hole, I said, I got this guy. And the rest is history. And the I got this guy thing was, remember, he pointed at Michael Grell and he said, you go get that, when he knocked the putt in. So get this again. He said his confidence level wasn't thrown off because he did one bad tee shot. How many times do you lose your confidence after one bad putt or one bad shot? He reminded himself, I'm playing well. And then he says to himself, it was a water ball that I caught because it had started raining. So perhaps the ball just slid off the club face. And then he goes, whether it's true or not doesn't matter. How cool is that? So even if it wasn't true and he made a bad swing, he's convincing himself that you're good. And then he says, let's just hit a good iron shot, so keeping it in the present, getting to the next hole, and try and get a putt to win each hole. So I stepped out of there and hit the best shot I would say I ever hit. To this day, it was the 6-iron I hit on 14. Once I won that hole, I said, I've got this guy, and the rest is history. And then he keeps on going, this is what I'm telling myself in my head. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. So that's Jordan Spieth. So now you can talk about the powers of recovery, or you can talk about the short game, or you can talk about the Spieth roller coaster. And trust me, I was buckled in and I had a front row seat because he didn't drive the ball that well in Phoenix last week, but he stayed in it and he made birdies and he made a run. He was part of the storyline. So even though the driver was errant, because of the mindset, because of the self-talk, because of how he talks himself up, he kept himself in the game. And then he says something here very important, and this is it. Because your brain can't distinguish between truth and fiction. If you say something, it's essentially marching orders. If you don't believe me, go and listen to my podcasts with Dr. Mike Grevlos on my On the Mark podcast. Maybe they should be in the next book. He says, this is what I'm telling myself in my head. Whether it's true or not does not matter. So I want to say this, and this is a message from Jordan via my podcast into my book to you who wants to be better when the pressure is up. When things go bad, and that's inevitable, you cannot dodge bad golf. Remember the cycle I've talked about? Good golf, indifferent golf, bad golf, indifferent golf, good golf. That cycle happens all the time. So when it's indifferent or bad, keep talking yourself up. Keep speaking life. Don't start telling yourself, I suck, I've blown the lead, this is over. Jordan didn't. Heck, he went to the bathroom, gathered himself, put the whole thing into perspective, and was like, I'm just one down. 5 holes left. If I get 5 putts, 1 on each hole, try and win a couple holes against this guy, I got him. And he did, because he spoke himself up. He spoke that life. The self-talk was uplifting. It wasn't self-deprecating. So here's my marching orders to you, my charge from Jordan and me. Speak life. Look at the great champions, the Tom Bradys, the Michael Jordans, the Tiger Woods. You know, they'll be critical of what they're doing in practice, but they will very rarely say something in public about their own performance if it was bad. They'll take ownership, like Pat Mahomes in the recent 2025 Super Bowl. He goes, it's on me. It's on me. I'll come back better. He took ownership, and then he's like, I'm coming back better. I'm going to do something about this. So here's the goal. Work on your game, but work on your mindset. And if your mindset's not there, from Jordan Spieth, whether it's true or not, whether you hit the bad shot or whether it was a bad swing or not, start to just talk life into yourself. It's not some silver bullet, but what it will do is it'll keep you in the game. And this is what I know about golf. If you stay in the game, you increase your chances to win. Now, this is going to sound logical, and you might have been like, whatever, but hear me. If you stay in the game by talking yourself up, you'll have a chance to win, or more chances to win. If you talk yourself out of the game, well, you've basically eliminated your chances. Because if you're talking yourself down, there's very little chance that you can overplay that or outplay that. Lessons from the best. This is one of the best. Multiple major champion in Jordan Spieth, a competitor of biblical proportion, and clearly a mind that is the mind of a great one. Later on in the chapter, he talks about making his way through the slump and simplifying things. The slump he was in and having to kind of retool on his golf swing, that's hard stuff to break through, but he's done it. So clearly, Jordan's skill is not just in his hands and feet. That is great. But what happens between his ears? That's where the magic happens. And that's where the magic can happen for you too. Check out the book. It's available at back9press.com/Immelman. It's a great read. As I read it back, I'm like, wow, this is pretty good. But it's not just all me. It's just me elaborating on quotes, things said by some of the best players and minds in the game. You will love it.